The real shift in your relationships doesn't happen when you learn a new organizational system. It happens when you start talking about what's going on in your brain, when you give the people in your life the language to understand what they're seeing. And this is really important, there is a big difference between an explanation and an excuse. Have you ever had someone you love look you right in the eye and say, "You never listen to me," or "I feel like I'm invisible to you"? And the hardest part wasn't hearing it. The hardest part was knowing that they were kind of right. And it's not because you don't care and it's not because you don't love them, but your brain was actually somewhere else entirely. Maybe you were mentally running through tomorrow's to-do list while they were telling you about their day. Maybe you forgot something important again, and you saw that look on their face. That mix of frustration and hurt that makes your stomach drop. And then there is the shame spiral, right? That starts. Can't forget that one, where we think, why can't I just be normal? Why do I keep doing this? Yeah, I have been there many, many times. Welcome to ADHD and with Jorie Houlihan. My name is Jorie Houlihan. I'm an ADHD coach, speaker, late diagnosed ADHDer, and your guide for the dopamine deprived. And today we are talking about ADHD and relationships. And I don't just mean romantic ones. We're talking friendships, family, coworkers, all of it. Because ADHD doesn't just live inside your head. It shows up in every single connection you have. Isn't that fun? Yeah. And if nobody has ever explained to you how or why all of this is so complicated for us sometimes, that's what today is about. I also want to say something right up front. This is one of the most emotional and shame-filled topics for women with ADHD. So many of us have spent our entire lives being told we're quote unquote too much or not enough in our relationships, whatever kind of relationship it is. And most of us heard those messages long before we ever knew we had ADHD. So here is what I want you to take away from today. Understanding what's happening in your brain is not about making excuses, okay? It's about getting the clarity that you need to show up differently. And that changes everything. Let's get into it. So here's the thing that I think a lot of people miss about ADHD and relationships. The damage is rarely dramatic, and in the sense that it's not usually one big blow up that just wrecks everything. It is the accumulation of small, invisible things over time. Forgotten conversations, missed deadlines, running late again, zoning out during important moments, not following through on something you said you'd do. Individually, each one of those things is small, but over time, they pile up. And the person on the other side of this starts to feel unseen. They start to feel like they don't matter. And that's when the trust starts to erode. And here's what makes it so painful for us. It's not that we don't care. It's that our brain works against us in those moments. Time blindness makes us chronically late. Working memory issues mean we forget conversations we definitely had. Executive function challenges makes it hard to manage the mental load of a household and our partners and our families and our work. And then our partners or our friends, etc., end up picking up the slack. So let's talk about the mental load piece for a second, because this is huge, especially for women. So many of us carry enormous guilt about not keeping up with the house, the schedule, the kids' stuff, the groceries, the appointments, right? The list goes on. And our partners, even the most supportive ones, may carry a little resentment about always being the one who remembers and plans and follows through. Now, neither person is wrong in how they feel, but without understanding that ADHD is driving a lot of this, it just looks like one person doesn't care enough to try. And then there's the masking piece. This one is really important for women who are diagnosed later, because many of us spent decades masking our ADHD symptoms. We held it together at work. We smiled through the chaos. We overcompensated in ways nobody can even dream of. Our partners may not even understand the level of effort it took for us to appear, quote unquote, normal, whatever that is. So when that mask starts to crack, and it always does, whether it's because of burnout, perimenopause, a major life change, whatever the trigger is, it can feel to our partner or our friends or our coworkers like things are suddenly falling apart. But the truth is, the cracks were always there. We were just really, really good at hiding them. Now I'm going to give you a number that might put this into some perspective. So, research done by Dr. Russell Barkley, who is one of the leading ADHD researchers in the world, has found that adults with ADHD are nearly 2 to 3 times more likely to experience separation or divorce compared to adults without ADHD, particularly by middle age. And a 2019 study by Bodalski and colleagues, published in the Journal of Psychopathology and Behavioral Assessment, found that emotional dysregulation, not inattention alone, was the factor that most significantly mediated the relationship between ADHD and lower relationship satisfaction. Now, I want you to sit with that for a second. It's not the forgetting. It's not the lateness. It's the emotional piece, the way we react, the way we shut down, the way our feelings flood us before our brain can catch up. That's what does the most damage. And what's even worse is the emotional component of this isn't even in the diagnostic criteria. And yet, every medical professional who works in ADHD will tell you that it is one of the biggest parts of ADHD. So, if you have been following me for any amount of time, you've probably heard me talk about rejection sensitive dysphoria or RSD. But I want to spend some real time on it today because when it comes to relationships, this is the thing that can make or break them. So, for anyone who's new to this, let me explain what RSD is. Rejection sensitive dysphoria is an intense, often physical, emotional response to perceived criticism or rejection. And I want to emphasize the word perceived. It doesn't even have to be real because with RSD, it doesn't have to be an actual rejection. Your brain just has to interpret it that way. Isn't that fun? It's not being overly sensitive. It's not being dramatic. And we're very often accused of being those things. It is a neurological response. Women with ADHD often describe it as like a gut punch, right? It's like a wave of shame that just hits you so fast and so hard that you can't even process what was said before the emotion has already taken over your entire body. And here's how it shows up in relationships. Let's say your partner gives you a piece of feedback, something totally reasonable, like, hey, you forgot to pay the electric bill again. A neurotypical brain might hear that and say, oh, shoot, okay, I'll take care of it. An ADHD brain with RSD hears, you're failing. You can't do anything right. They're going to leave you. And then one of two things happens. Either you shut down completely, you go quiet, you withdraw, you can't talk about it because the pain is too overwhelming, or you explode, you get defensive, you say things you don't mean. And you do this because the emotional pain is so intense that it bypasses all logic and goes straight to survival mode. Neither response is what you want. We don't want that. And neither response is fair to your partner or your friend or whoever. But it's not a choice. And that part is what people don't understand. And here's the cycle that it creates. See if this sounds familiar. Your partner gives you feedback. Your brain interprets it as I'm failing. You either shut down or you blow up. Your partner feels like they can't bring anything up without it becoming a crisis, so they stop talking to you about things that bother them. The resentment builds on both sides, and you both end up lonely inside the same relationship. Sound familiar? And again, this does not have to be just romantic relationships. This can be friendships. This can be work relationships. This can be any kind of relationship. Dr. William Dodson, a psychiatrist who specializes in ADHD, has noted that nearly all of his patients with ADHD report experiencing rejection sensitivity. And for many of them, it's more impairing than the inattention or the hyperactivity. That's how powerful this is. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my God, that's me, I want you to know this. First of all, you're not crazy. You're not too much. You're not oversensitive. Your brain is wired to feel rejection at a 10 when the actual situation is a 2. And once you know that, you can start working with it instead of being blindsided by it. One of the things that I know for myself is that if I don't hear from somebody right away, and I've mentioned this in a past episode where I sent a text to a friend to get together and I didn't hear from them for like the day. And I just spiraled, right? Now, this was prior to my diagnosis, only to find out, my friend had been in meetings all day and forgot to text me back. Now that I know that about myself, when I start to feel that, does everybody hate me? I think everybody hates me. That I start to hear that kind of sentiment going on in my head because that's where a lot of us go. I start to say, wait a second, is this real or is this RSD? Wasn't that is it real or is it Memorex? Yeah. Is this real or is my brain lying to me? Usually my brain is lying to me. Not everybody hates me. I mean, I'm sure some people do. Who knows? But anyway, it doesn't matter. In that moment when I'm thinking everybody hates me because of a missed text or something along those lines, I now can say, okay, I see what's happening here. I need to ask myself some questions, right? Like, is this real? And that has been really helpful. Now, ADHD being what it is, right? We're very optimistic and at the same time we catastrophize everything. And there'll be times where I'll say, oh, yeah, no, not everybody hates me. But then I think, well, or am I gaslighting myself? I don't want to gaslight myself because we really want to be authentic. It takes some practice, is what I'm saying. You get it figured out, but this is what it looks like when RSD kicks in. Okay. So we have talked about the invisibility load, right? We've talked about RSD. And if you're anything like me, you're probably sitting there thinking, great, Jorie, now I know why my relationships are hard, but what do I do about it? And the answer starts with one thing: communication. Real, honest, vulnerable communication with the people in your life. Now, I know that sounds scary. And I know that for a lot of us, our instinct is to either over explain, over apologize, or just say nothing at all. But here's what I have learned both in my own life and working with my clients: the real shift in your relationships doesn't happen when you learn a new organizational system. It happens when you start talking about what's going on in your brain, when you give the people in your life the language to understand what they're seeing. But, and this is really important, there is a big difference between an explanation and an excuse. ADHD is an explanation, it's not an excuse. And I need you to know the difference because it matters. Okay. So an excuse sounds like, I forgot because of my ADHD, period, end of sentence. Now that puts the burden on the other person to just deal with it. An explanation sounds like, my ADHD makes it really hard for me to hold things in my working memory. I know that affects you, and I'm sorry. So I'm going to set up a shared calendar and put reminders in it. And if I still miss something, here's how you can bring it up in a way that doesn't send me into a shame spiral. Do you hear the difference? One just deflects, one takes ownership. So I want to give you a simple framework that you can use. I call it name it, own it, solve it. So step one, name it. This is my ADHD showing up. Just identify it out loud. That alone is so powerful because it separates the behavior from your character. Okay? It's not a character flaw. You're not a bad partner. You have a brain that works differently. Step two, own it. I know this affects you and I'm sorry. No defending, no minimizing, no, yeah, but just acknowledgement. Step three, solve it. Here's what I'm going to try, and here's how you can help me. This is where systems do come in. Shared calendars, weekly check-ins, where you sit down and ask each other, how are we doing? Dividing tasks based on brain strengths, not gender roles. Using a visual cue like closing the door to signal when you're in hyperfocus mode and not intentionally ignoring them. And I want to say something specifically about explaining RSD to the people in your life because I know this is hard. It feels like you're asking them to walk on eggshells, but that's not what it is. It's saying when you bring something up with me, my brain can interpret it as something much bigger than what you intended. And I'm working on that. But in the meantime, it helps if you can approach me calmly and remind me that you're not attacking me, you're just communicating. That's not asking for special treatment, that's asking for understanding. And here's the research to back this up. In a 2016 study in the Journal of Clinical Psychology, found that couples where one partner has ADHD showed significant improvement in relationship satisfaction when psychoeducation about ADHD was included in the process. Meaning, when both people in the relationship actually understand what ADHD is and how it works, things get better. Understanding is not a nice to have kind of thing. It is a critical part of the repair in any kind of relationship. So if you have been carrying this alone, if you have been trying to white knuckle your way through relationships without ever letting anyone in on what's happening in your brain, this is your permission to stop doing that. It's okay to talk about it. You deserve to be understood. And the people who love you, they want to understand. They just need you to help them. Trying to explain ADHD to people who don't have it is hard sometimes. I understand why they think it looks like laziness or entitlement or whatever other label they've given it. I understand why it looks like that, but I also know what's actually happening. And so when you can find a way to explain to them what's going on, again, owning it, not using it as an excuse, just explaining that this is why this particular behavior happens. This is what I am trying to do to work on that. And this is how you can help me. Again, that's asking for understanding. It just makes such a big difference. All right. So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a few questions to sit with. You don't have to answer them right now, but I want you to just let them, roll around in your brain a little bit this week. First, when you think about your closest relationship, where do you see your ADHD creating friction that you haven't talked about yet? Is it your RSD? Is it your time blindness? Is it your forgetfulness? What is it? And how can you talk about it with them? Second question, have you ever shut down during a conversation because your brain interpreted what would be considered normal feedback as rejection? And what did that look like for you? Third, and this one's a hard one, are you using your ADHD as an explanation or as an excuse? And are you willing to be honest with yourself about which one it is? It's really important that you get the distinction and not use it as an excuse. Fourth, what is one thing you wish the people in your life understood about how your brain works? And finally, if you could sit down with your partner, your best friend, your family, your coworker, whoever, and hand them a user manual for your ADHD brain, what would be the very first thing in it? Mine would be, I have terrible out of sight, out of mind that also includes people. So if you haven't seen me in a while, it may be because I forgot about you, but it's not because I don't love you. It's because I have terrible out of sight, out of mind, because I have poor working memory. Yeah, it would be something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, of course. Anyway, that's how that works. All right, let's bring this home. So if there is one thing I want you to take away from today, it is this. ADHD does not mean you are a bad partner, a bad friend, a bad sister, a bad daughter, a bad coworker, a bad mother. Okay? It means your brain works differently. That's it. And most of us have been trying to show up in our relationships our entire lives without ever having a manual for how our own brain operates. And that's exhausting and it's unfair. But it does not have to stay that way. Self awareness is the thing that changes everything. It is one of the very first things I work on with my clients. What does your ADHD look like? And when you understand your patterns, you can communicate about them. And when you communicate about them, everything starts to shift. Not overnight, not perfectly, but steadily. You're not too much. You're not enough. You just need the right understanding and the right systems. And you deserve relationships where people see the whole you, not just the parts that are easy to love. So if you have people in your life who are pushing back against this, who are not open to the conversation, that should probably tell you something too. Because it's not just focus, it's everything. Okay, now it's your turn. I want you to do something for me this week. I want you to think about the person in your life who needs to hear this episode. Maybe it's your partner. Maybe it's your sister. Maybe it's your best friend who keeps saying, I just don't understand why you fill in the blank, whatever it is. Send them this episode, not as a guilt trip, though. We're not trying to guilt trip anybody, but as a bridge. And then come and find me and let me know. What is the one thing you wish the people in your life understood about your ADHD? You can drop it in the comments, send me a DM. I want to hear from you. And as always, if you like what you're hearing here, please like this episode, follow the podcast, and leave a review. It helps more women like us find this community. And we need each other. We need each other. Thank you again for joining me. This is ADHD and until next time, stay curious.